And welcome back to the 2021 Wrestling Mindset Leadership Clinic, perhaps the greatest wrestling coaches convention that has ever happened. We're really excited to have everyone on board. Again, we're dedicating this whole experience to our former teammate from the University of Pennsylvania, Matt Eveleth, as well as our former coach, Don Ernst, both of which who are fighting for their life now, battling cancer. We ask you for your prayers and to pray for everyone in the wrestling community struggling spirit, mind, body, or emotions. We remind you that leaders are readers. Leaders are readers. Every high achiever should have a summer reading plan. Everyone. That's why we recommend that you have the Wrestling Mindset, Build the Predator Mindset book. We have, of course, Dr. Yessis published many books. You can check that all at his website. We're going to post the links under there. Tom Ryan's Chosen Suffering, Carl Adams, Jim Miller, Lou Bannock, Lee Kemp. We're going to throw links to all these books, so you don't have to worry about it. Everyone's going to get the links before, but you want to have a serious reading program. Also, that's a big group that we're trying to really get some great information, or we're trying to get them a lot of resources, as many as we can. So beat the streets. Make sure you click the link.
Yeah, I need some, please.
And also, asking us about.
Gene, I'm here.
Excellent. And we're here with the great Dr. Michael Yessis now. He's specialized in strength exercises, the 1x20 strength program. He's the president of Sports Training Incorporated, professor emeritus at California State University, Fullerton, and prolific writer with 17 books and over 25,000 articles in sports and fitness. And we're happy to have him here with us today. Thank you very much, Dr. Yessis.
Oh, happy to be here, Gene.
Absolutely. So now we have a little bit of time. Basically, we have, when we get close to the half-hour mark, they'll be able to click out to see the next presenter, or the people who want to stay can stay with you. So if we want to go on for longer, 45 minutes, 50 minutes, you have the floor.
Oh, all right. Yeah, that'd be good, because mostly I'd like to continue a little bit longer.
Excellent. Excellent. Go ahead. The show is yours. We're excited to have you.
Okay, very good. All right. Now, I have two topics here. I'm going to start off first with the specialized strength exercises. First, we have to differentiate what is a specialized strength exercise as opposed to a general exercise. There are two categories, general and specialized. A general exercise is good for conditioning, but has no relationship whatsoever to skill execution. In other words, it's not going to make you a better wrestler. It may give you more endurance, may give you more strength, which may be used by you or not. But the important point is, it's not going to improve your performance in executing your skills. Now, a specialized strength exercise will do this. Now, when we say specialized, it has criteria. Number one, the exercise must duplicate the exact neuromuscular pathway. Excuse me. Number two, it must have the same type of muscular contraction. Number three, it must have strength developed in the same range of motion as used in the sport. For example, let's say if you want to strengthen the hip flexors, usually you're in a standing position, you raise your knee. That's working the hip flexors. But you can also start with the leg behind your body and then pull it through. Now you're working the hip flexors in a different range of motion. All right, so those are the main ones. There are really about 6 criteria, but if you fulfill those 3, then I think you're doing a good job. Now, why do we have this separation? We have this separation between the exercises so that it tells you what exercise to use and when. See, all too often in all fields of sport, we do general exercises. Oh, that's a great exercise. Well, yeah, but is it making you a better athlete? Is it making you a better wrestler? If it's not, why do it? Now, you can have for the general conditioning phase, that'd be good. But when you want to improve your sport, when you want to improve your moves in wrestling, then it's critical that you adhere to these criteria. They're the only type, the specialized strength exercises are the only ones that transfer to your sports performance. That's the key. Now, that's a new concept in this field. Nobody's really distinguishing exercise like this. And I find many people that call me and say, oh, hey, that's a great program. Could you periodize it for me or work it out for 12 months? No, I can't work it out for 12 months because all exercises are specific and they're individualized. So every athlete has to develop the strength from that exercise. But the development could be different for each athlete because all of you are starting off at a different point. Some of you are more or less more developed, some are less developed, some have peculiarities in their movement patterns, whatever it might be. So you have to gear it to the athlete. I recall a Russian wrestler from years ago when they were dominant in the sport. When he assumed the initial stance, he would have his left leg out in front. And the opponent would see that. He'd say, oh, man, I'm going to take this guy down in 2 seconds. Be no sweat. Well, when they started, the leg disappeared. But he's already down there trying to find a leg. So the Russian always had the advantage. You know, he was on top already and just push him down and go. So that was a specialized exercise that he used. He developed the ability to do that movement. It didn't come just from doing general exercises. Okay, so let me stop there on the specialized strength exercises and take a look at the 1x20 strength training program. This is a program that I developed. I've been using all my life, but we didn't formalize it to a name like the 1x20. But I have been doing it all the time. But a few coaches said, hey, you got to give it a name. And that's where we came up with 1x20. In essence, it means you do 20 or more exercises in one training session. Now you're probably looking at me and saying, this guy's nuts. How can you do over 20 different exercises? Easy, if you only do one set. And that's the key. When you're a beginner or just starting on a strength training program, one set will give you the same benefits as 2 or more sets. So why do 3 sets like we typically do? That's high intensity. We don't want high intensity at the beginning. High intensity is not the best intensity for development. Moderate exercise is. So the 1x20 is ideally suited for this. And remember, we're talking more of the beginner. And it could be more advanced, but for more advanced people, the 1x20 is used for different purposes. Okay, so the key point here is that you can do a multitude of exercises. Now look what that opens up for you. You can strengthen every single joint. A typical high intensity program, you're doing 5 or 6 exercises. How in the world can you strengthen the ankle, the knee, the hip, the core, or the midsection, shoulder, arm, elbow, wrist? You can't do that. It's impossible. And when coaches say, well, yeah, you do the squat and that develops your whole body. Well, no, you have to zero in on whatever body part you want and do exercises specific to it. Like for example, in a squat, you have to hold the spine in an erect position or in its normal curvature. Great. So you develop isometric strength. That's not going to make you able to bend and twist the trunk as you need it. It can only help you hold a stable or stiff trunk. So it has its value, but it's not that great. All right, so not only got everybody ringing today, not only do you, with the 1x20, not only are you able to strengthen all of the joints of the body, but to do it well. You can isolate every joint. Like for example, in a typical program, when I put somebody on a 1x20, they start off with 4 exercises for the ankle, especially like runners and other athletes who need a good, strong ankle. Wrestling and the ankle may not be that important. So you can cut down, only do two exercises, flexion and extension. Then in the knee joint, we do standing leg flexions, leg curls. Now we're developing the knee. And we do this with the use of active cords rather than doing a squat. See here when you're standing and then do the leg extension, you're isolating the joint. No other body parts are involved. Then after the knee, we go to the hip. And we do 4 different exercises for the hip, maybe 5. We do flexion with an exercise called the knee drive. And this is a great one for wrestlers. It gives you the ability to drive the knee any which way you want. If you're trying to, escape somebody from underneath, you're usually driving your knee. Then there's hip extension. This is seen in anytime you're driving the leg backward. Another important one for wrestlers. Then is hip abduction, where you're pulling the leg out to the side. This one is seen a lot in different movements. When you get caught or you're trapped in a particular position, this is the movement you might have to execute. You don't know, but any good preparation for a wrestler means you have to develop the muscles and movements for the unexpected. You don't know what's going to happen. And wrestling is phenomenal for that. You don't know what's going to happen every second. One minute you're thinking you're going to be doing this, next minute you're doing that. So you're zigzagging and whatever. I think you get the point. Anybody who's done any substantial amount of wrestling knows that you have to train for the unpredictable. This is what makes a good wrestler, or a great one. All right, and then you have hip adduction. Another move that comes in quite often when you're wrestling on the ground. All right, so that takes care of the hip. Now I go to the midsection. We got to do at least 5 exercises. You have to do development of the upper abs. So here's your sit up, about 45-degree sit up. You got to develop the lower abs. When I say develop, usually the abdominal muscles contract all at once, but you get greater emphasis on the upper or lower part. So on the lower part, we do reverse sit-ups. In other words, now you're rolling your butt off the floor, rolling it up toward the face. Then you also have a lot of rotation. A good wrestler also has to have very good ability to rotate the trunk or the hips, especially when you're trying to escape. You got to be able to roll and twist those hips. So we do the reverse trunk twist. Then once we get used to that one, we graduate to the Russian twist, which is a little bit more advanced. Okay, and then for the lower back, this is the most ignored area that I have found, not only in wrestling, but in other sports. You have to strengthen that lower back. Look at all the injuries that you typically experience in wrestling. The lower back is there. So we do what we call the back raise. We hang over mainly on a glute ham developer. Then you raise the body up to strengthen the lower back muscles or lumbar muscles. But it's critical where the axis is. Too often, when people do this exercise, they do it with the axis in the hip. Well, that's good for the hip extensors, but we want to move it back a little bit more. So the action is in the lumbar area, not the hip, the lumbar area. I'm sorry, didn't have time to shut everything off. Okay. So where was I? Yeah, with the lower back. We do the back raise. Then we have to do the back raise with a twist. Now, anytime you can do a twisting movement of the trunk, it should be with the spine in its normal position. Don't try twisting like you see many people do a sit up with a twist. Once you're sitting up and then you try twisting, there's no way in the world you're going to get that range of motion. The spine has to be straight. Now we go into rotation. So there's rotation for the abdominals when you're rotating forward. But when you rotate backward, now you're strengthening the erectors. All right, so we move up from the spine or the midsection. Now we go to the shoulder. Shoulder has many movements. From abduction, raising it up to the side, in front, across the body, every which way. So there's a multitude of exercises. I don't want to go through each one. It's going to take too long, especially when we get to the elbow and wrist. But suffice it to say that you can see that there are many, many exercises that are needed to fully develop the body. That's the whole point of this. And the 1x20 is ideally suited for developing all the muscles of the body. Now, once we strengthen all of the muscles, we find, at least I've found, that as we do this, we're also improving coordination. This is the key because you're developing the ability to move the body in a certain way. When you do that exercise, you're moving the arm or the trunk or the leg in a particular manner. This in turn is developing coordination. And especially when you get into more combined movements, then the coordination becomes even greater. So in addition to developing strength, we're also developing coordination. And as a result, when you get done with the 1x20 program, which usually lasts anywhere from 8 to 12 weeks, one cycle, you're going to be a better athlete. So this is not just a conditioning program to get you stronger. You're going to get stronger, and because you're doing so many repetitions, you're doing up to 20 reps. 20 exercises, 20 reps. Now, these are guidelines. You don't want to stop when you hit 20. If you're capable of doing 22, 23, 25, whatever, then you do this. But if you're over 20 for more than 1 or 2 workouts, then you want to increase resistance. That knocks you back down to about 15 reps. Then you work up again. So the program gives you many different abilities. It develops many different abilities. This is why it's so successful. Too often it gets negative criticism with people saying, oh, that's too much. They'll never do. You need heavy weights. No, you don't need heavy weights. See, we have gone overboard with strength. You need strength, but you need all of the other physical qualities also. What good is strength without coordination? It's a waste. You know, be a bodybuilder. If you want to have all that muscle, be a bodybuilder. No problem. But if you're an athlete, you don't need this. You don't want it. It's a negative. All right. Moving on from there, you can see how this program develops all the muscles and joints of the body. Then from here, once we get to the end of about 8 to 12 weeks, we move on to the next stage in the 1x20, and that's doing 2 sets of 14 repetitions. See, now we're emphasizing a little bit more strength, but we're also emphasizing the endurance component. See, the beauty of this program is not just strength, it's muscular endurance. And when you take a look at wrestling, what's going to be most important? How strong you are, or how long you can show or display good or maximum strength. You know, your match doesn't last 1 minute. So for you to last 3 minutes or more, or take a rest and go again, you need muscular endurance. And then you also need the coordination with it, and so on. So the 2 sets of 14 could be adjusted to whatever you want. You have to cut out some exercises now. Rather than doing 20 exercises, you have to drop it back down, because you want your workouts to last about an hour, hour 15. You don't want to go any longer, or then it becomes counterproductive. Okay. Then after we finish that program, which also lasts about 6 to 8 weeks, we go into 3 sets of 8. Now, the 3 sets of 8 can be adjusted any way you want. If you're an explosive athlete, which wrestling in many cases is, then you want to do 1 explosive set of the same exercise, 1 set for endurance, 1 set for strength. Or you could adjust it 1 strength, one set for explosiveness, 2 sets for strength. See, depending upon what you need. If you need more strength, then you emphasize it. If you need more endurance, then you emphasize more repetitions or more sets. So you can see how long this program now lasts. It could be up to half a year now. But what else are you going to be doing at the beginning? So here's a program for you. And this usually precedes any work on a mat, although you can combine both. Because in the 1x20, you can include some specialized strength exercises, as well as many general. You have both. But it's variable. And here's where you, as a good coach, has to look at your athletes or wrestlers and say, okay, Joe, you need more of this. John, you need more of this. And, you know, this is how you separate them. But don't have everybody doing the same thing, the same way, for the same amount. You have to individualize the strength training. And most importantly, you got to be consistent about it. If you're not consistent, you're not going to get the benefit. You're not going to get the results. Then, of course, having the exercise gradual and so on. And if you take a look at all these criteria, I developed all of these from looking at the literature as well as personal experience. Every book you pick up on motor learning and so on always says start easy, learn how to do it, then make progress. So this is what we're doing. We're starting off slow and easy. We're covering all the bases. We're covering all the muscles and joints. And we're gradually moving along. And we adjust it to the athletes. So that's kind of the 1x20 in a nutshell. Is benefits. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Real quick there, Dr. Yessis, because we just want to let everyone know that the next session. So Dr. Yessis is going to continue right now. He'll keep going for the next 20 minutes or so if he would like. We'll end that at a little bit before 2:00. But we have the next presenter, Mike Powell. You could click that link if you wanted to jump into that. He's got great information. Of course, you could stay right here for Dr. Yessis too. And I just want everyone to understand just how important this is, the information Dr. Yessis is giving you. I learned about him and his material in about 2013. I thought it was great. It changed the way I look at strength training for wrestling and sport-specific training. And this is a great opportunity, how you're training your athletes when they're beginning sports. What program do you put them into for strength training? I get that from coaches all the time. I have a beginner wrestler. What do I do? Well, here's what you do. This is how you get them stronger, by working all the different muscles of your body. Also, if you notice, Dr. Yessis is speaking about the entire body. He's speaking about flexion. He's speaking about extension. These might be terms you're not as familiar with. This is why it's important to get his materials and learn that. With my master's in exercise science, I can tell you this is very important. And if you don't understand all those little points, you'll be able to understand it. It just takes a little bit of time, but he's covered those bases. So you have the introductory strength program for athletes. And then one of the things he's going to be sharing with you soon is about the wrestling specific program that he's created. We've gone through, we all know about the 7 basic skills in wrestling. That goes back all the old wrestling books, the 7 basic skills. You could probably even increase that to 10. Well, Dr. Yessis has done research on each one of those positions and broke down, based on the joint angle and the specificity of the movement, exactly what exercises you need to be proficient in those movements optimally. You don't train minimally, you don't train maximally, you train optimally. So I'll turn it back over to Dr. Yessis, but I just want all the coaches to realize how important this is, and that after this is done, you'll be able to get that wrestling specific program that Dr. Yessis has developed. So you know your athletes are training optimally for the sport of wrestling, not for bodybuilding, not for powerlifting, not for football, but for the sport of wrestling. So again, we have the link. If anyone wants to click into the next one, the great Mike Powell, best practices in coaching. Anyone else, stay right here with Dr. Yessis. He goes through some more. Back over to you, Coach.
Okay, thank you, Gene. Yeah, I'd like to amplify a little bit on what you were saying about the program that's being developed. This would be great for all our wrestling coaches. By taking these 7 movements, we can, I think I just lost you. Are you still there? Hello?
Yes,
oh, okay.
I'm here.
I didn't know if I was talking to myself. Okay, by taking these movements and I'm creating all of these different exercises for them, this could simplify your life and training very, very quickly. See, by just doing these exercises, you're going to see great improvement of your athletes. No question about it. That's the beauty of, doing a very specified or specialized program. You're going to see results in their wrestling. You're not going to see results only in, hey, look at my muscles getting bigger. So what? But hey, look at that takedown. It was so much quicker, so much faster. He's escaping now when he's in the bottom. He's not getting stuck down there. Something like this. This is what's getting improved. You're improving the ability to wrestle better, not just be a better athlete. Although this is concurrent with it. So, yeah, the specificity and the results is just amazing. And every coach that I know of that has gone on the 1x20 and included specialized strength exercises for their sport have all seen great, significant changes, improvement. Now it sounds like, oh, this guy's full of it, and nobody is going to get that much better that quick. You will. It's hands down. This is why it's new, and even in my book, I call it the revolutionary 1x20 program, because for most coaches, it is revolutionary. And you will see these results. It's so hard to convince people of this, but as the old saying goes, the proof is in the pudding. Try it and you'll love it. Okay, I don't know if we have anybody out there. I've kind of covered the main points, but if anybody has any questions, feel free, and maybe I could, answer them and bring out something else that I haven't covered.
One question that we saw here was, at what age should the kids begin their first 1x20 program?
Very good question. Usually the years, let's say between 9 and 12, these are the formative years. This is where we see most improvement, not only in the physical qualities, but in the skills. This is where they should be learning all of the skills. So when should they start? Anywhere, 9, 10, 11, 12. So when they're 9 years old, you gear it to that level. You say, well, I haven't hit puberty yet. All right. But they learn how to do the exercises. So then once they hit puberty, boy, they just take off like rockets. Don't wait until puberty, because then you have to learn the exercise, get accustomed to it, and so on. Now you're taking valuable time. But when they're young, have them learn how to do. This is the year for the skills, excuse me. It's so hard to get this point across. And now many of you don't get your wrestlers until high school or a little bit later, and they're already 14, 15 years old. This is kind of old to get started. You can, though. Many great athletes have started at this age and became great. But if you can start younger, that's even better. So 9, 10, 11, these are the formative years.
Excellent. And there's no difference between coaching male versus female?
Nope.
Difference. Okay. Excellent.
You come out of the same pod, so to speak. Yeah. So you have to take a look at certain things with the female. Adjust the program when they're going to be hitting their menstrual cycles, so they ease off. You got to take it easy, and every girl or woman is different in terms of their reactions during the menstrual cycle. But this is really the only time that you have to look for differences and make adjustments.
Okay, and you would have them do the 1x20 for 8 to 12 weeks and then jump them to 2x14, or would you keep them at the 1x12?
Yeah, see, the 2 sets of 14 or the 3 sets, that's still all part of the 1x20.
Okay.
See, it's a natural progression.
Okay.
When you go from, the 20 reps down and so on. Now, there are cases where, let's say if the athlete is very weak when you get him at the beginning. So maybe go through 2 cycles of the 1x20 and then drop down to 2x14 and 3x8. See, all of it, you can juggle all of these phases.
Okay.
The important thing is what you do during the phase.
Okay. Okay. So roughly, assuming they were building according to plan, you'd have them do 8 to 12 weeks, 1x20, and that'd be roughly 20 exercises. Then the next cycle would be 2x14, and I guess you would do roughly 10 exercises. You would half the exercises. Yeah. And then, and would that be 8 to 12 weeks also?
Yep.
And then after those 8 to 12 weeks, then you would move on to the 3 sets.
Yep.
And how many repetitions? Roughly?
8. No more than 8.
Okay.
See, because now you're dealing with more explosive exercises. And when you're doing an explosive exercise, you never want to do more than 10. See, right. You only have enough energy for 10 repetitions. For
Okay.
10, your ATP stores only last about 10 seconds. They get
Okay.
used up pretty quickly.
Okay. So you would be doing that 3 sets of no more than 8 repetitions. And like you said, depending on the athlete's specific needs, if they needed strength, you would do 2 sets for strength, 1 set for endurance. Or if they needed more endurance, you would do 2 sets for endurance, 1 set for strength
Or explosive power.
or explosive power, which would be a plyometric exercise.
Right.
Okay.
Or even if it's not plyometric, can be done for greater speed.
Okay. Okay. And then would they stay at this 3x8 for the entirety of their career, or then would they eventually then progress to go ahead?
No, then you go back down again. You never stay on the same program for very long periods of time. The body, as I think most of you know, I don't say pliable. Yeah, it's pliable, but it'll plateau out if you stay on the same program. You have to keep changing it. It needs variety, but not every day. See, the variety comes in after X number of months. After 3 months, we got to change. After another 3 months, we got to change. Or whatever, 3 or 4 months, we got to change. And even typically the season lasts 3 to 4 months. Okay, so you kind of get used to it. The body gets used to it.
Okay. And would you ever have them, quote unquote, max out, ever go for an all-time number, or does that not make sense for an
Sure.
athlete?
No, that's fine. And we do this every once in a while because athletes like to see this. Hey, how strong am I? And what's interesting, they're going to be amazed at how strong they've become. Let's say they did a 200-pound squat. Then they go on a 1x20. And after, let's say, 10 weeks or 12 weeks, all right, let's test you again. Now they're doing 250, 300. They say, wow, I wasn't even using heavy weights. That's right, you don't have to. See, they gain significantly. So that's where the one set is good once in a while. Just to show them, look how much stronger you've become.
Right. Right.
And that really stokes them. And then they're ready to go for even more.
Right. Right. But as you've said, and I've heard you say this many times before, that shouldn't be the preoccupation of the athletes. I need to bench press 300 pounds. I need to squat 400 pounds. No, you're training to win wrestling matches. That's
Right.
the goal. And that's the numbers. That's nice, but that's not how you're gauging the success. It's the transfer of training from your training, what happens on the wrestling mat.
You got it. See, and that's where the 1x20 really helps because of the coordination that's being developed and the strength and muscular endurance and all the other physical qualities. This is what enables them to become better athletes because you're also developing some of the skills. You're doing some of the exercises that are specific. And because the exercise is specific, it improves your performance. So they become better wrestlers without even thinking wrestling.
Right. Unfortunately, it's hard for a lot of coaches. I'm sure even a lot of coaches and wrestlers on this call right now, they hear it, it makes sense, but they still can't break free of that powerlifting / bodybuilding mentality of I need to lift heavy weights. And if I don't lift those heavy weights, I'm not going to be strong. Therefore, I'm not going to be a better wrestler. So they need to, it's a mindset. We need to have that mentality shift.
That's true. Yeah, and this is sometimes the biggest obstacle to overcome. You got to get that out of your heads. Now, one thing that the high intensity is good for is injury. You want to get injured? Guaranteed, go on a high intensity program. You will get injured. Notice I didn't say the possibilities are better. No, you will. This is hands down. And you say, okay, why am I going to get injured? I'm getting stronger. That's right. You're getting so strong that other muscles can't keep up with it because you're emphasizing only certain muscles. So as some muscles are getting much stronger, others are getting weaker. You have this dichotomy between them, or discrepancy. So then when you get into a wrestling movement, oh yeah, you're powerful in some movements, but you're very weak in others. And that's where you get your injury.
Right. One of the things we always tell the athletes is you need to study the best in the world. And I wasn't planning on going down this road, but it's important that we bring it up. Your book about the secret of Soviet sports training, which also changed the way I think about sports. You look at the Soviets, they're dealing with, and the Russians now, they're dealing with less talent than we have here in America. In America, we tend to throw a lot at the wall and the cream tends to rise to the top. But the Russians develop their athletes, and you notice their training is very different a lot of times than the Americans. We see the way we're lifting weights. I've watched video footage of some of the Russians, the way they lift weights, and it looks like they're not using enough weight. They're not training hard enough in the weight room, but yet they're highly successful on the mat. And one of the things you did that makes you credible with this is having translated many of the Soviet journals, many of which I bought from 1964 to 1995, roughly. So you've seen the research, the best Soviet research, the best wrestlers and the best wrestling scientists, the best sports scientists in the entire world. I don't mean to go on long about this, but I have my master's degree in exercise science. We didn't learn anything like what's in your book on the secret of Soviet sports training. So can you speak a little bit to how this coincides with what the Russians, what the Soviets do, even if it's not what we're used to here in America?
Yeah, no, we can incorporate a lot from what the Russians did. The shame is how to use the term did. They were so good in what they did, but it was all government sponsored. So of course, in '94, when the country broke up, so did the whole training system. It was really, I almost cried, you know, it was so fantastic. But what was so fantastic about it? Well, they researched, number one, they researched everything under the sun. They developed different systems. They took the young kids, not the common conception as we have that, oh, they would take the kid out of the cradle and make a great athlete. No, no such thing. But they knew when to start training, which was about 8, 9, 10. The only exception was women's gymnastics or some other sports that require, you know, getting started when you're 3, 4, 5 years old, especially in gymnastics. They started off with skills, like a world-class soccer player in Russia. They didn't play the game until they were more or less teenagers. Now you would say, look at what we do here in the United States. We're playing a sport right from the beginning. No, but they spent more time on skills. How can we get them stronger? How can we get them more skilled? So skill training, skill training, skill training. Then when they started playing, they were great players. As opposed to what we do is play, 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 and hope I'm going to get better. You know, survival of the fittest. You know, we see that the Soviets knew when to do what and when. They had all the different systems, like Vereshchevsky developing plyometrics. He's the one who came up with this whole concept. Now, where do you do it? See, we have a misconception in the United States of what plyometrics really are. The true plyometrics is more the shock method, you know, like a depth jump, where you drop down and boom, right up again. But we have come to believe that even jump exercise, any kind of jumping, is plyometric. It is not. World of difference. The amount of time spent hitting the ground and taking off again should be minimal, 1 to 2 tenths of a second. But most easy jumping is 2 or more tenths of a second. That's no longer plyometric. Okay, but I don't want to take off on plyometrics. That was only one. But they would integrate the two. But skill was number one. Once you got the skill, then we can play. And as they played, now other factors came in. Now it's like, okay, you need more strength in these movements. You need more explosive power in these movements. Then it became more specialized. I remember this is how I got started in this whole field. Reading Russian journals. Now we get this one track and field journal. And every month they would have an analysis of a world record holder. I got to repeat that. They were analyzing world record holders. See, now, typically, I and other coaches at that time would consider a world record holder, hey, he's the greatest. He's already got good technique. No, not to the Soviets. They could all be better. This is how I learned that every athlete can be improved. He can be a better performer. So they were doing these analyses and I would read them. I'd say, what the heck are they talking about? You know, he already looks good. Here, I was a biomechanics specialist and I didn't know what they were talking about when it came to biomechanics in terms of the movements. It shows you how our teachings were so far behind what they were doing. Yeah, so by reading that journal, it took me about a year before the proverbial light went on. Oh, now I know what they're talking about. So that became the key. And they were, you know, what they were doing, it was a pleasure to read it because every time you read an article, you were learning something new. And here's a nice distinction. Once they, let's say, came out with the plyometrics, this is how it's done, you didn't read about it anymore. They would just say, okay, and then you go into the plyometric phase, period. As opposed to, you know, what we do, oh, you got to explain all about the plyometrics, what you do, and so on. No, once you got that concept, that was second nature. You didn't have to repeat it anymore. You go on to other things. I remember an instance once I was with the Soviet track team. See, this is what I miss also. We used to have an exchange of sports all the time, United States and Russia. This is during the Cold War. But so anytime there was competition with the Russians, it was like, who's going to win the war? And I would get together with the Russians. Sometimes I'd help out with the American teams, you know, being a translator and so on. But I got to know quite a few of the Russians. And we became good friends. They'd come over and we'd get together and chat and have a few drinks and so on. But I remember this one in particular. The Russians really wanted to know about sprint training. See, they had great runners, but they didn't have the sprinters. They had Borisov, he was the only one. But, you know, United States, we've been loaded with great sprinters all the time. And UCLA at that time was a hotbed for sprinters. So the Jim Bush was the coach at UCLA. So the Russians were asking me, hey, can you get a hold of Bush? Bring him over here. We got to find out what he's doing, you know, with his training. So, all right. I went over and I got a hold of Jim and I said, hey, the Russians would love to talk to you. Can you come over and, you know, sit down and have a couple? So he came over and first thing the Russians said, okay, what's the secret to your training? And he looked at him. Says, what do you mean? Said, what do you do to make your sprinters, to make them so great? He says, I don't do anything. Oh, come on now, don't give us that. We know you got to be doing something. You can't just develop these guys overnight. He says, honest. He says, I don't do anything. When I get them, they're already great. All I do is get them ready for a competition. And the Russians couldn't believe this. They couldn't handle it. No, he's not telling us the truth. I said, Coach, he is telling you the truth. But see, that's where the training was. He developed them to such an extent, but they couldn't get the sprinters. I never forget that.
That's great. Dr. Yessis, how many times a week should the athletes be doing the 1x20 program? How many days a week? We had that question.
Three
Okay.
times a week, no more, no less.
Okay. If you had to pick a single piece of equipment to use, or maybe one or two, what would be the equipment? Maybe the active cords. You might want to speak about those, because that's something people don't know about. I got the active cords from your website, and they're great. I use them. They feel really good on the muscle. We'll talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, okay. Active cords are a set of elastic tubing that I developed, but they're a little bit different than your typical tubing or, bands. I put dog hooks on the end of them, clips, so I can attach them. Then I have, in the whole set of active cords, I have a non-slip belt that goes around the hips. Notice I said hips, not waist. And every time even when I'm working with athletes, okay, put it around your hips, they invariably put it around the waist. Says, no, the waist does nothing. You have to be able to move the hips. And for wrestlers, this is critical. So you put the belt around the hips, and there are 4 D-rings. See, and with the clips, I can clip on wherever I want the belt, the elastic cord. And in some exercises, I clip on both sides. I'll use 2 of the same. And I can do lunges this way, or I can do it with 1. Becomes more versatile. But the ability to click on and click off, and for speed, sometimes we want to change quickly. All right, do a couple of sets with this weight, unclick it, put another one on, different color, and so on. Okay, then there's an ankle strap. So the ankle strap allows us to do all kinds of hip exercises. There's a dual attachment strap where you can attach it, let's say, to a high overhead beam, or a beam, or a heavy equipment in a gym, and then you can do the exercises. So they're very versatile, and they don't weigh much. Most athletes take them with them whenever they travel, and they can still work out, no sweat.
Indoors, outside, anywhere. You could go anywhere.
Yeah, we do a lot outside. Even with track guys, you could hook it up to a fence, any kind of a post, so you can do the exercise. And we do some for explosiveness. Sometimes we'll do some real quick explosive exercises on a knee drive, then immediately go out and run. See, now we're leaving an overload on the muscles, telling them what to do, especially to be explosive. And then this translates to explosiveness in the running.
And now would your strength training be mostly, so the program you created for wrestlers, remember we looked at the Kerry Colott videos, who's obviously one of the best American wrestlers ever. We saw him break down 10 of the most common wrestling moves or situations, those 7 basic skills, and you have those exercises for them. What percentage roughly are the active cords versus the normal strength, the traditional weight training, that thing?
About 80%.
80% active cords.
Yep.
Wow.
Now, first question should be why? Why so many? Because the active cords allows you to do exercises that you can't do with dumbbells and barbells. So you can't do rotational exercises with dumbbells and barbells. You can't do diagonal movements, except with some free weight machines. But even there, it becomes more cumbersome. So let's say if you're out on the field, hey, where's my free weight machine? See, you have to be in a gym. So this frees you. You don't have to. You no longer have to be in a gym, and you don't need the equipment.
Right.
So you can save a lot of money by not buying the machine.
Right, and it seems it would be a lot safer also. And like you said, you're working different planes of the body motion, because again, if you're training specifically for wrestling, you need to be doing movements that are similar to the sport.
Right.
And generally speaking, the exercises we do, I mean, a standard bench press, you're never doing basically just a bench press in wrestling. You're
Got it.
turning, you're moving, you're twisting, you're doing different things. So it's
Yeah.
important. In other words, it's good. A bench press is good, but it's not as optimal. Would you say that?
Yes. Oh, yeah. See, there's nothing wrong with the exercise. Bench press is an excellent exercise, but how much of it transfers to wrestling? See, this is the key you have to answer. Oh, the question you have to answer. And you hit the nail on the head. See, like, with the bench press. Now, if I could rotate and then go, see, now I might be coming closer to what's done in wrestling. See, you can combine movements. You can't do this with free weights. You can to a certain extent with dumbbells, but they become limited.
Right, right. And that's why we're excited about this great program that you put together, because this is exactly what wrestlers need. So we're going to send this out to everyone. Of course, after the call, we'll post up the links. But we want you to get Dr. Yessis' program. You should definitely get the 1x20 book. You should get The Secret of Soviet Sports Training. I probably have at least 7 of your books at my house. It's so important, and it's training smart. There's a lot of hard workers out there. We just had Dan Gable on right before you, Dr. Yessis, and he was saying how he studied the Soviets and that you have to work hard and smart. And that's exactly what you're bringing to us.
Yeah,
So,
smart is probably the best or the most important. Train smart. Know what you're doing, know why you're doing it. Just don't do for the sake of doing it.
excellent. Excellent. Thank you very much, Dr. Yessis. I really appreciate it. We're going to make sure we send over your information to everyone, and we're excited for everyone to get your wrestling-specific strength training program and all the beginners getting started with the 1x20 system. So thank you again.
Good.
I appreciate it, Dr. Yessis. We'll be talking soon.
You're very welcome. Good. Thank you, Gene.
Take care.
You too.
Bye.